This is from Rocket Pictures, some old VHS company from 97. This is the alien interview. They got a call from somebody called Victor, an anonymous source called Victor here.
It's a remarkable piece of
footage.
If it's a hoax, it's very well done. If it's not, then I would say it's probably revolutionary.
It's a fake in my opinion.
If you continue to ask questions that are out of bounds, I won't hesitate to terminate this interview.
That is so badass.
Powerful, because this is not a staged event. This is real.
This was a big thing back in the day for UFOlogy, or ufology, or whatever. Majestic. The alien interview. This was huge. It was rare that footage or photos would actually come up back in the day in the
Interest in UFOs and Area 51 is at an all-time high.
the late
Last
80s
year, a
and
highly
90s.
rated TV special and best-selling home video purported to show an actual autopsy of an alien being from the famous Roswell, New Mexico crash of 1947. Many people and even some experts believed that autopsy footage was genuine. If that was indeed the body of an alien being from another world, could the footage in this program be the world's first hard visual evidence of an actual living and breathing alien being? An alien being communicating in an interview with a highly covert arm of the U.S. government? If the footage we're about to show you is genuine, then this could very well be the most important video in the history of mankind, proving once and for all that we are not alone.
Within Nevada's Nellis Air Force Range, protected by the tightest security in the world, is the Groom Lake Test Site, aka Dreamland, aka Area 51.
Dreamland, if
An
you ever read.
installation so secret, the government cryptically acknowledges its existence only as an operating location. Until recently, the military flat out denied the presence of such a base. It has served as the testing ground for many secret research and development projects, such as...
Hold on, I just want to say Bob Lazar had a book called Dreamland, and I actually, when I was out in Nevada, read it. If you guys haven't read it, check it out. Bob Lazar is kind of a character around this time, speaking out about some of the early stuff they were doing at Area 51, and they'll get into Lazar a little bit too, but they would basically, he was saying all these things about how they're having him try to reverse engineer technology, right? Deep in Dreamland, and he wrote this book called Dreamland. I know there was a PDF of it going around for a while, but check it out. It's actually a very interesting read.
The U-2 and SR-71 Blackbird spy planes, the F-117A stealth fighter, and now the SR-75 penetrator, the super-secret replacement for the SR-71.
And that's the thing that is true about Area 51, that the things that are verified, and it's not much because, you know, the government really still, even to this day, is very touchy about even acknowledging the existence of Area 51. But what is verified is that a lot of this really experimental and advanced, sort of like plane and stealth fighter and drone technology is coming out of that base. That's what's known for sure. The alien stuff is all sort of conspiracy, but we do know that it's a real place, that they do actually build advanced
a select
machines,
group of specialists with high
aerospace
security
technology.
clearances, some reportedly as high as 38 levels above top secret, arrive at McCarran Airport in Las Vegas to be flown to Area 51 aboard a Boeing 737. From the time they leave the ground until they return to Las Vegas at the end of each working day, they enter a world no outsider can ever truly know, except through rumor and the occasional shocking revelation.
In 1989, a physicist named Robert Lazar went public with the stunning claim that the United States government was test flying dish-shaped aircraft of extraterrestrial origin at Area 51. Interviewed in silhouette by a Las Vegas TV reporter, Lazar, calling himself Dennis, claimed to be employed at a site on the outskirts of Area 51 known as S4.
So this is Bob Lazar here, and we'll get more into this guy. He's a real guy, but a lot of this stuff stems from his claims.
Attempting to back-engineer the saucers to discover the secret of their advanced propulsion system.
was a very sleek, thin-looking, flying saucer-shaped craft. There were 9 total. I only got to essentially work, back engineer, or analyze one of the craft. It's very plain. It's all one solid color, a grayish pewter color, the same color as the outside of the craft. There are no sharp corners anywhere. Every device in the craft, the seat, the amplifier housings, everything has a rounded corner on it, almost as if it was all fashioned out of wax and then slightly melted, so everything curved, even where the ceiling meets the floor on the end. Everything has a curve to it. Very, very plain, very wide open, very impractical use of space. And there are 3 levels. The lower level houses the amplifiers themselves that swing, the 3 of them. The center level is where you enter the craft, where the seats and the amplifiers are, and the top level is a small area, and I did not have access to that, so I don't know what's up there.
So as you can see here, Lazar has very intricate and even intimate details about the structure and even the interior of these crafts here. Now they said, keep this in mind, that Lazar, some of this information he has come out and publicly said, but initially he came out to a Las Vegas reporter interviewed in silhouette under the name Dennis, right? Trying to basically sort of conceal his identity. Now, these days, and of course during the time of this in '97, when this was released, Lazar had said some more stuff publicly with his name and face attached to it. But keep that in mind that initially he started off interviewed under the name Dennis.
Absolutely alien craft, there's no question about it. Well, first of all, the scope of the project was to back engineer it. If they were United States craft, we wouldn't be going backward trying to find out how they were built if we had built them. Second of all, the size of the equipment inside, the size of the seats, the materials that were in use, completely alien to us, pardon the pun, and the fuel, element 115, essentially non-existent. All these factors together, and of course the briefing information stating that they were alien craft.
Along with Robert Lazar, rocket scientist David Adair is one of the few individuals who will go on record concerning his personal experiences with alien technology at Area 51.
Well,
yeah, Adair is another
origin. They shouldn't have let me see that. And then
very interesting source.
They locked me in a room, and the reason they locked me up in a room was because I wouldn't tell them any more about how the engine would function, and they started getting a little bit more perturbed about that.
A former consultant to NASA and...
I love that internal car shot there. And they got great audio here as well, driving with the top down. I mean, this was back in '97. They used some badass microphone to get this audio.
The reason they locked me up in a room was because I wouldn't tell them any more about how the engine would function, and they started getting a little bit more perturbed about that.
I like how it's in grayscale too.
To NASA and top aerospace companies, Adair claims that in 1971 he was brought in to study the engine of a downed flying saucer.
What I was looking at was a technological marvel of its time, and it was a magnificent thing to see sitting there, and the whole situation just started really getting me more angry than anything, because the fact that they could sit on such a hunk of technology and not tell us about it. Here we are using liquid fuel engines and rockets at NASA, and here they got an engine that's probably, in theory that we know of, could be a speed of light, an engine capable of speed of light or even faster.
Ufologist and lecturer Sean David Morton has appeared on Sightings, Strange Universe, and Hard Copy. He offers his own perspective on Lazar's stunning claim and the super-secret Area 51.
Area 51 is approximately 135 miles north of Las Vegas. It sits in a box that's at the western middle corner of the Nellis test site. It was originally called the Groom Lake Facility, and Area 51 actually gets its name from a bombing classification. There's Area 49, 50, 51, 52, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things that Robert Lazar told us was that if we simply went out to a black mailbox at 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday nights, that we would actually see flying saucers, that these objects would test, and that this was the military testing time between 6:30 and 9:30, and then early in the morning between about 3 a.m. and about 6 a.m.
Vigorous efforts have been made by employees of the government and others to debunk Lazar's claims and discredit him personally. Nevertheless, Area 51 has become the center of a raging controversy, whether in fact certain clandestine agencies of the U.S. government are in secret contact with alien beings.
Project Sigma was supposedly a deal between the United States government and various extraterrestrials that after the Roswell crash of 1947, that an organization called Majestic 12 was formed, and then in 1953, President Eisenhower was then brought in on this. Well, there was a negotiation going back and forth between the United States military, the government, and the extraterrestrials. Apparently, we had a number of things that the extraterrestrials wanted. Number one, the military needed hardware. We wanted technology, we wanted weapons technology, propulsion technology, metallurgy technology, and in exchange for this, the ETs were willing to trade us their hardware for our software, and software namely being us. What they primarily wanted was genetic material, and in exchange for that, they were willing to give us certain technological advances, like a number of flying saucers.
So, okay, all right, this is obviously another level here. They say it pretty casually, but that's a big revelation there, that they want,
advances, like
this guy claims, I want to get that frame, because that is freaking awesome. This guy says, okay, they want human genealogy, they want human, whatever, genetic data, right? What, so they can breed us, or mutate us, or do something, or take us back to the future, or where the fuck ever. There's obviously, there's so many hypotheses here. There's the Zeta Reticuli. Some people think they're from the Zeta Reticuli star system. Some people think these are, whatever, humans from the distant future, or descendants of humans. Some people think these are some type of androids or something like this. And believe what you will. And there's sort of credence to sort of the biological aspect of it as we get along here. We haven't even gotten to the actual alien interview point yet. This whole beginning segment, interestingly enough, is about Bob Lazar and sort of these other leakers, early on leakers about the location where this takes place here in Area 51. But that's a pretty big drop from this ufologist, right? Here that says he believes what Lazar says. Some of this stuff is confirmable. If you go out to the black mailbox, you will see it, right? But then they have other stuff like this. He firmly believes, and he just straight up says it, that they're trading tech for our biological code to some degree, or something like this. Why on Earth and beyond would they want this? That's for us to speculate. That's for us to theorize. Obviously, this guy's not an authority on anything, but he's got a pretty big stance, you know, and he's not alone in that, you know. There are a couple other people that have gone over the leaks, gone over the data, and that this is what they believe as well. So let's carry on here.
It is out of Area 51 that the tape we are about to show you was supposedly smuggled.
On Friday, July 26, 1996, the offices of Rocket Pictures, a producer-distributor of motion pictures and television programs, received a phone call. A male voice, identifying himself only as Victor, claimed to be in possession of a videotaped interview with an extraterrestrial being. Tom Coleman, president of Rocket Pictures, was intrigued enough to take the call.
I, of course, thought this was some hoax. In fact, I thought it might have even been my brother at one point. But as we spoke, this was someone who seemed to be very serious. We went back and forth on this, and I basically decided that, you know, this is a little bit too weird for me. Thank you and goodbye. As I hung up, I had a very strange feeling that maybe, just maybe, there was something here. He said he had a tape of a space alien, an ET, that was being held in a military installation in Nevada. I'm not sure as a prisoner or a guest. And he had this on tape.
As we've all
Okay, so keep in mind, this is the president of Rocket Media or whatever, Rocket Entertainment here, who's saying, oh, this guy's crazy. I don't know whether or not to believe this guy. He wants to release this footage to us, you know, whatever, and stuff like this. He's trying to sell these tapes. Keep this in mind here. But, you know, he's pretty earnest himself. He's saying, I don't know whether to believe this or whether not to, but this is a kind of a production they're making out of it here. This leak. Keep in mind that Rocket Entertainment is sort of capitalizing on this and trying to squeeze every ounce of this dramatically as they can, which is awesome because there wasn't a lot that came out for these sort of UFO and alien conspiracy media back then. The music they are using is badass. The shots and cuts they're using and the angles and close-ups they're using is badass. The mystery of it is sweet. You know, the atmosphere of it is pretty cool because they tried to pump it up.
Prisoner or guest. And he had this on tape.
So yeah, he supposedly has this footage.
As we've already heard from Sean Morton and others, this is not the first time allegations have surfaced that the U.S. government is playing host to extraterrestrial biological entities, or EBEs. The first and most famous alleged contact was the Roswell flying saucer crash of 1947.
The Roswell,
this is
of course.
the incident from which the alien autopsy footage supposedly originated. But there have been persistent rumors that not all of the aliens retrieved from the Roswell crash were dead. The final fate of the survivors, if any, is unknown. 2 years later, however, in 1949, another alien is reported to have survived a saucer crash, and this being, known as EBE-1, was taken into custody and kept at a safe house. EBE-1 supposedly suffered from chronic health problems, which the doctors of the time were helpless to treat. According to a controversial, possibly fraudulent briefing document dating from the Jimmy Carter administration, EBE-1 was interviewed by means of pictographs, from which it was learned that he came from the Zeta Reticuli star system.
Can we eliminate one or more of these categories from discussion?
This is a pretty wicked
The laborious
recreation.
process of developing a set of symbols that could be used and understood by both human and alien amounted to the creation of a new language. If such an effort was made, it represents the greatest achievement in linguistics since the deciphering of the Rosetta Stone.
That's where they got the emoji alphabet. That's not even a joke, I'm 100% serious. To
That
generalize
such an achievement would be kept
among all
secret
consciousness.
illustrates the hysterical paranoia of the time as the
An
Cold War
unconscious
intensified under the threat of nuclear annihilation.
symbolic alphabet. Obviously this part is dramatized, but they do have the real footage that they do show.
The so-called Carter Aquarius briefing document states that EBE-1 died of unknown causes on June 18, 1952. Skeptics who doubt the authenticity of the Carter Aquarius document find it unbelievable that highly advanced alien beings would allow one of their own to die under the primitive medical care of a species that had barely begun to conquer its own diseases. But as we will hear, there are those who claim that to the aliens, death is not a final end to be feared, but a mere transition.
It was in the late 40s and early 50s that the U.S. government's policy toward UFOs was formulated. Publicly, there was Project Blue Book, which made a great show of gathering data on all the major UFO sightings, finally declaring them all to be hoaxes, mass hysteria, or swamp gas. But secretly, there may have been another policy at work. Over the years, several documents have come to light which seemingly confirm that a clandestine group, Operation Majestic 12 Group, aka MJ-12,
Yeah, I love
was formed by
Majestic.
special classified presidential order on September 24, 1947, for the express purpose of gathering information on UFOs and extraterrestrials, while at the same time keeping such information not only from unfriendly powers, but from the American public as well. If indeed Area 51 has become the nation's repository for alien technology and possibly alien visitors, then the extra-constitutional justifications for such secrecy were developed in the MJ-12 group's planning sessions. James B. Forrestal, Secretary of Defense under President Harry Truman, is widely accused of being the mastermind behind the creation of MJ-12.
Yeah.
Once created, Majestic may have expanded its mandate beyond what Forrestal had intended.
That is 100% true. I love this host guy too.
Forrestal may have known concerning flying saucers and alien visitors. That knowledge died with him when in 1949 he mysteriously plunged to his death from a window at Bethesda Naval Hospital.
Damn.
Though he was being treated for depression, many UFO researchers doubt that his death was a suicide and point to the sinister workings of the possibly mythical MJ-12.
Yes,
which in their hypothesis may have been protecting its secrecy from a man who had come to believe the people had a right to know. As late as 1989, according to Bob Lazar, the identification badges at Area 51 read Madge for Majestic.
Yep.
In December 1994, a document purporting to...
This host guy's awesome. This is like the Twilight Zone or something, man. This is sweet. This is like like everything I aspire to be, man. This is so badass.
The Majestic 12 Group Special Operations Manual was leaked to a noted UFO researcher. It contains the following directive under the heading Isolation and Custody. EBEs will be detained by whatever means are necessary.
No.
And removed to a secure location as soon as possible. There follows this disturbing amplification. Although it is preferable to maintain the physical well-being of any entity, the loss of EBE life is considered acceptable if conditions or delays to preserve that life in any way compromise the security of the operations. From the beginning of the UFO age, it seems, secrecy was always the government's prime directive.
They're okay with killing them.
In 1988, another anonymous government source, codenamed Falcon, claimed that a second extraterrestrial biological entity, EBE-2, voluntarily became a guest of our government, allowing himself to be examined and interviewed.
Yeah, this is according to Falcon, this guy Falcon. That one of them voluntarily...
Area 51 became, for a time at least, a sort of extraterrestrial embassy, the setting for mankind's first attempt at diplomacy with beings from another world.
What the fuck?
Different sources disagree as to how communication was established.
No way. That is fucked.
There is universal agreement that the EBEs are incapable or unwilling to speak human language. In addition to the pictographs used by EBE-1, it has been reported by Falcon that in the early 1950s, EBE-2 was fitted with some sort of artificial voice box, allowing him to speak words, and that he learned the English language very rapidly. Other sources doubt this story, however.
Interesting.
We Americans?
What has been reported most persistently is that the aliens communicate via thought projection, or telepathy.
Would have been tortured, made to give up their secrets, instead of questioned in this friendly manner.
We cannot be forced to communicate.
Has it been tried? Not by us.
We speak to who's ever willing to listen.
The idea of telepathic communication with alien beings carries with it the same doubts and controversy attached to telepathy itself. Do the practitioners of this ancient art really have the ability to read minds? Or are they crafty charlatans who simply tell the listener what he or she wants to hear? If the cynics are right, then the self-proclaimed telepaths recruited by the government in the 1950s were playing an astoundingly daring hoax by claiming to speak for the mute visitors from the stars.
No, that would be
Defenders of
something.
telepathy call this notion preposterous and point to the long history of government-funded research into mind reading as proof that their science has merit. In the last 4 decades, there have been persistent, often contradictory rumors and even eyewitness accounts of other alien visitors meeting secretly with military or government officials. But what about today? The Tester Corporation has recently come out with a model kit of Gray, the extraterrestrial life form, and a scale model of the so-called sport model, the UFO Bob Lazar says he studied at Area 51. This UFO kit has quickly become one of the most successful model kits in the history of the company. If the military is, in fact, conducting tests of extraterrestrial spacecraft at Area 51, then where are the alien creators of these craft?
Yeah, good question.
In his first TV appearance under the pseudonym Dennis, Bob Lazar was asked if there are living aliens at Area 51. Clearly nervous, he evaded the question by saying, quote, "I really want to steer away from that right now," unquote. In subsequent interviews, however, he admitted catching a glimpse of 2 scientists talking to a strange short figure with long arms. He also reported seeing several documents that seemed to contain first-hand information on alien civilizations.
That's what he claims.
Lazar is skeptical of a claim made by Falcon that a group of EBEs have been given complete control of a separate base within Dreamland. But he does admit having read a report of a tragic misunderstanding between military personnel and alien beings in the late 70s.
No.
Lazar states that it had to do with bullets the MPs were carrying, and that the bullets might explode, possibly due to a field the aliens had generated in that area. This encounter supposedly resulted in the deaths of all the humans involved by head wounds.
Damn.
But if there was ever a large-scale alien presence at Area 51, Lazar saw no evidence of it doing his work at S4 in the late 80s. Is it possible that the deadly misunderstanding of 10 years earlier brought human-alien cooperation to an end?
In his September 21, 1987 speech to the UN General Assembly, President Reagan himself did little to dispel the notion that this deadly misunderstanding brought human-alien cooperation to an end.
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Are the inconsistencies between various tales coming out of Area 51 evidence that these stories are lies? Or are the discrepancies the result of an intentional campaign of disinformation designed to discredit any elements of truth that may be reaching the public?
If so,
yeah, I like all this distrust that they sow. It's really cool by saying, like, oh, raising the questions like, oh, are the aliens evil? Is the government victimizing them and their victims being held captive prisoner? Or is the government trying to protect us? Or are they lying to us? You know, and stuff like this? Or are they trying to tell us the truth? And stuff like this. So the more questions they bring up, the more they invite the viewer to ask about it. Oh, are the mediums that are contacting them telepathically, are they just charlatans? Are they evil? Are they trying to trick people? You know, the more acceptable the original premise becomes. And the original premise, of course, is they had an alien do an interview. That's kind of what the whole story surrounding this is about. And they're about to actually get to this pivotal moment here with Victor here, which this character is really, really interesting. Obviously, in disguise here with some fake facial hair and like shadows, but this character's sweet, you know, and this footage was really awesome, really interesting when this came out. So it's just very interesting, sort of expanding the mind in all directions, inviting viewers to come to their own conclusions about different aspects of it, but reinforcing and re-cementing sort of the central idea of it, which is they had an alien and they did an interview.
How does Victor fit into the jigsaw puzzle of questionable witnesses to the alien presence at Area 51? Is he a hoaxer, a government dupe, or a frightened whistleblower with the hard evidence to back up his story.
I made it very clear to Victor that his credibility was the entire issue here, and that everybody's going to think this is a hoax, and that how are they going to possibly verify this? What he said was, you can do anything you want in terms of verified, any type of due diligence. He will answer whatever questions put forward. We could do whatever type of checking. We could bring in experts. We could have the tape tested. We could, in fact, he encouraged all of these aspects. He just did not want his face and his real name revealed.
At Coleman's insistence, Victor agreed reluctantly to appear on camera, but only in disguise, in shadow, and with his voice electronically altered. The questions were agreed upon in advance, but during the actual interview, the discussion occasionally deviated from Victor's approved questions.
What is your occupation at Area 51?
I won't answer that. I have had reason to be present at Area 51, but I'm not going to clarify whether or not I was there as an employee.
Are you saying you were there as a visitor?
I'm not going to specify why or in what capacity.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Only that I was there.
Can you tell us how many times you were there?
When I agreed to this, my fundamental ground rule was that I would not be asked to divulge personal data that might help pinpoint my identity. If you continue to ask questions that are out of bounds, I won't hesitate to terminate this interview.
Are you saying that the number of times you were present at Area 51 is enough to pinpoint your identity?
Any specifics will narrow the field of suspects. Of course, I could lie. Let's say I've been there 47 times, or anyway more than once.
Let's turn to the tape itself. The copy you've supplied is not the original tape.
No.
Was the original at Area 51 when you copied it?
That's out of bounds.
Is it fair to assume that the copying of tapes at Area 51 is heavily restricted?
You can assume anything you like. I would say that's a fair assumption. That's obvious. I will say that this tape was copied under special circumstances. Otherwise, copying it would have been impossible.
Can you be more specific?
More specific? Okay, I'm sure they've figured this much out already. Recently, there was a wholesale transfer of video documentation from analog tape to digital disc storage. In a couple of instances, this allowed data to leak from a highest security system to a less high security system. Even so, this particular tape was the only... I think that's about all I'll say about that.
Was there something about this particular clip that made it more accessible to be copied?
Not necessarily, no.
Was there something about the content that caused them to file it differently or give it special handling?
This interview was terminated.
Now, this is very interesting. This character here, Victor, who of course is the one that came forth with this special footage, this leak, out of Area 51, and he claims because when they were transferring everything from film to digital, all this footage that is normally locked up so tight, you know, was moving around, being shuffled around. And this is an instance of a clip that he got out. Now, he didn't want to answer if there's something specific about this clip that was able to bypass it, or he doesn't want to be tracked and located, but obviously he's going by the name Victor here. He's in disguise. But his voice is awesome, obviously. But keep in mind his mannerisms. And there's a lot of different theories about this guy, about who this guy is. People have actually tried to find out who it is, and I personally have my own theory, and I'll talk about that as well.
Interview resumed only after a discussion of the ground rules.
Have you personally seen the alien being that appears in the tape?
Yes, I have, but I stress I was not necessarily present at the interview session that appears on the tape. I'm not going to be specific. I may have encountered the being at another time.
What can you tell us about the alien interview we're about to see?
This one is rather recent, very late in the series. The interview process has been ongoing since the being arrived, which was in 1989. Approximately twice a month, they sit it down for a session that generally lasts from 3 to 5 hours. If they try to go longer than that, or if they schedule the sessions more frequently, the being becomes unresponsive. There's a fair amount of infighting among the scientists from different disciplines to get their questions asked.
What has the alien revealed?
various minor technical details of the saucers, the physicists and engineers are frankly frustrated. They feel the being is withholding information. Possibly concepts are getting lost because all the information has to come through a telepath. But also it may be that the bulk of their scientific knowledge is just too advanced to be translated into our primitive conceptual framework. It's analogous to if a human scientist were to try to translate quantum mechanics into the grunts and screeches of a chimpanzee.
That's not a very flattering comparison.
Frankly, there's a high attrition rate for scientists in the program. You'd think they'd be energized by the challenge, but a lot of them take the ego deflation very hard when they find out not only how much they don't know, but how much they aren't even capable of understanding.
What else has the alien communicated?
Oddly enough, the being seems to have a much easier time communicating spiritual concepts.
One other thing I love that I just want to mention here, I think this shot and this framing is so badass, not only with the shadows and disguise on this guy's face, but the like plain like back room wall they have behind him and this weird fucking plant, whether either it's fake plastic plant or it's some dying, wilting, like eerie looking evil plant. And it's interesting how they zoom here and then they cut right into the next thing. Now Victor's got some stories. He's encountered this being, although he doesn't want to say if he was necessarily present here or not. But keep in mind what precisely Victor's claims are. He was able to get a copy of this footage. He has encountered this being before. And you're just going to have to see. They, of course, have the dramatization of it, but they have the real clip.
There's a high attrition rate for scientists in the program. You'd think they'd be energized by the challenge. But a lot of them take the ego deflation very hard when they find out not only how much they don't know, but how much they aren't even capable of understanding.
What else has the alien communicated?
Oddly enough, the being seems to have a much easier time communicating spiritual concepts.
The human body is a vehicle, a vessel. And the vessel must be maintained to serve the spirit.
What the hell?
With maximum efficiency. But a broken vessel can be replaced. The human spirit, or the soul, can have many vessels.
Is the process natural or technological?
Both are one.
That shot is awesome.
Technology is a natural excrescence of humanity. Technology is a process the vessel uses to perfect itself.
So this transference of the soul from vessel to vessel, did your kind create the mechanics of it, or is it a natural... Did it predate the intellectual creation?
Before understanding must come acceptance.
And it's not technological.
Well, I think what he's trying to say is that the question is meaningless. The soul can travel from vessel to vessel. Reincarnation, transfiguration, whatever. It's real.
What I'm getting at is, does he know how it's done?
Victor uses the term vessels to refer to the alien's conception of the body as a disposable vehicle for the soul. The UFO cult known as Heaven's Gate used the term containers in a similar context. The mass suicide of the Heaven's Gate cultists illustrates the dark side of accepting such ideas at face value.
That's 100% real.
Doe, the Heaven's Gate cult leader, preached that humans can pass from container to container. The mysterious Victor, on the other hand, harbors no such belief. In his interview, recorded months before the Rancho Santa Fe tragedy, Victor made his attachment to his own earthly vessel abundantly clear.
And let me just state here publicly, to head off any clever ideas anyone might be having, I have never been, am not now and never will be suicidal.
But how would the public know if something happened to you, since we don't know
Yeah.
who you are?
Yeah.
I'm taking care of that. Trust me. If something happens to me, if I die, people will know who I am.
Do you think it's a reassuring sign that these aliens can communicate with us on a spiritual plane?
It would be nice to think so, but I'm not sure if it's really such an achievement considering the mismatch between our intellects. I mean, you're not going to have much luck making your dog understand calculus. But if you pet him on the head and say, "Good dog," aren't you communicating spiritually? And doesn't the animal control officer say, "Good dog," when he comes to put some poor stray to sleep? Doesn't the vet try to reassure the animal just before he spays it? When you're dealing with beings whose intellect is so far beyond your own, I don't think it's safe to assume they have your best interests at heart.
What about the content of the tape segment you brought?
As I said, this is late in the series. In fact, it's quite close to the end.
Because of his unwillingness to reveal his own identity, Victor's story stands or falls on the credibility of the tape he supplied. Here, exclusively, for the first time anywhere, is the uncut, uninterrupted alien interview tape, shown in its entirety in real time.
Here it is. Oh, this music. This is nostalgic. You can see it moving around. It's sitting down at the table. This is kind of what they were trying to do in the reenactment. It's looking around. It's looking right at him. There's not much light in this room. They say later on that it's very sensitive to light, so the lights were down in this room, but they wanted the shot illuminated at least. It's very dark and very eerie, mysterious. When you look at it, and especially it's in low quality, there's shadows around the room. The human mind is so gripped by an image like that, something that looks almost like human, but not. It really, your mind plays tricks on you, and it really captures the imagination back in the day, you know, when people are really digging deep into these extraterrestrial leaks and stuff that come out. People really are looking for the truth. And they took this stuff a lot more seriously back in the day. It was a lot more underground. You know, this was like a gold mine. So you can see, obviously, it's starting to move around. It's becoming uncomfortable. It's either having trouble breathing or it's having trouble processing, and they'll actually sort of hypothesize what is actually going on in this clip here as well. And Victor will explain it a little bit. So we know Victor was able to get this clip and leak it while it was being transferred over to digital, but the medical staff is coming to check it out here. You can see them kind of trying to recreate this in the dramatization. Trying to take care of it. Or at least keep it alive.
You removed the soundtrack from the tape before you turned it over to this program.
That's correct. I can't allow the voices of the project personnel to be heard by the general public. There's a very good chance their family or friends on the outside might recognize them.
Isn't your purpose in releasing this tape to expose Area 51 to the world?
My purpose is to expose the existence of the aliens, not compromise these individuals. I made the decision to come forward. I'm taking precautions to protect my own identity, and I don't think it's fair for me to put these others in danger of exposure. In any case, the interview on the tape went nowhere. It was interrupted, as you'll see.
Can you describe for us what we're seeing?
All right, we're looking at the interview suite at S4. It's kept dark for the comfort of the aliens. The figure who is just barely visible in the left foreground is the telepath, and behind the camera is a raked seating area for observers. Although in this case, I believe the only other person present was a military aide. The alien is seated behind a glass partition in a biocontainment area, which is maintained at biosafety level 2, the lowest designation. That's primarily for the protection of the aliens, not us. The theory is that if they were going to infect us with an alien bug, it would have happened 50 years ago. In fact, all the indications are the aliens eliminated microbial and viral life from their own ecosystem long ago. They aren't susceptible to our diseases directly, but it has been shown that microbes can reproduce and form colonies within their respiratory systems, which tends to exacerbate the debilities they seem to suffer anyway in our environment. In fact, you can see here the alien is beginning to flag. The interview was not going well. The telepath was trying to clarify some points from a previous interview, but he wasn't receiving coherent responses. As you can see, the being is in real distress. At this point, the telepath is sending out a message to the medical staff. He's trying to communicate with the alien, but he's getting no response. There's very little he can do. There's no direct connection between his space and the biocontainment area. That's the aide stepping in on the right. The medical staff should be there by now. They're slow in responding. There they are. I have to say the medical personnel at S4 are less than first rate. They tend to be selected for their willingness to keep secrets rather than their medical competence. By the way, he's not shining that light into the eyes. It looks that way, but in fact he's checking for hemorrhaging around the eye sockets and in the nasal cavity. I'm sorry. It's very hard for me to watch this.
Listen to that, he says, I'm sorry, it's very hard for me to watch this. How crazy is that? They do hint that he has some sort of personal involvement here, to this footage specifically.
You're asking me if I think this is real? That have I finally seen a space alien? I don't know. But I do know this. I know that this is not a tricked up version like the alien autopsy. It doesn't attempt to distract you away from the alien. It doesn't have that cinema verite, black and white. It doesn't go to great lengths to try to fool the audience. Straight ahead. It's an alien on tape. Pretty much the way you'd probably film it. But the point is this. What if it is real?
In evaluating the authenticity of the alien interview tape, the logical place to begin is with the videotape itself. What can the technical details of this recording tell us about its origin? Rocket Pictures sent Victor's original tape to the Phoenix laboratory of renowned image analyst Jim Delatoso. Using the most up-to-date digital technology, Delatoso tried to determine the tape's authenticity.
I've been exploring, looking at different aspects of the image itself to develop questions for a matrix on, is it real or is it fake?
I grabbed a frame in the computer
and we're outputting it now in digital format, and you can see that we have an absolutely solid picture. What we've done is taken the picture and moved it over so that we can look at the information that's in between the frames. Now, when we look at the motion video, we can see that it still is not bad. And when we have this little indicator down here, it tells me that the original image was transferred using some kind of time-based corrector. These are video screens up here, television, video monitors, and they're off at an angle. If this was shot using a video camera with lines on it, we would see moire patterns up there, and we don't see the moire patterns. So there's a probability that this was shot originally on film, possibly a film stock like 7252 or 7247, depending on the lighting.
The idea that these images may have originated on film is in direct contradiction to Victor's statement that the interview was shot on video.
But he said they had to transfer it from
On
film
a
to
closer
digital.
inspection, Delatoso decided the images could indeed have been recorded by a video camera under
on
certain
tape?
specific conditions.
In this case, I get the sense of it that this was originally created using either film, transferred telecine to beta, that then this is the third generation, or it was taped under very low light conditions with the video gain boosted probably 12 dB.
Even the emotionless analysis of a computer cannot provide a definitive answer. Delatoso's efforts yield tantalizing hints, but in the end, they only increase the mystery.
The emotionless intelligence of a
One of the key
computer.
things about this creature are its eyes.
Like the other experts,
Yeah, its
video
eyes.
analyst Jim Delatoso was emotionally affected by what he saw. He took the tape very seriously and offered this personal opinion.
If someone faked this, I don't like these people. I think it's a bad thing for people to do, because if extraterrestrials come here, it's an incredibly important thing to understand who they are and why are they coming here. If this is not faked, I think we've got a glimpse here of a sense of communication with someone who came from a long distance away.
When asked his opinion of the alien interview, Adair was careful to answer only in terms of his own experiences.
If you're referring to the film where it's aliens being interrogated at Area 51, I don't know. I've never seen a UFO in my life. I've never seen aliens pickled in a jar or anything like that. But I know I saw an engine that wasn't from our terrestrial technology. If you look at an engine like that, it came out of a craft. If it come out of a craft, then that craft has occupants. So it's very logical to assume then that those occupants could still be here and they could be interrogating them, or they could have downed another craft since 1971.
Makeup artist John Criswell has provided special effects creatures for many Hollywood motion pictures and television shows, such as Spaced Invaders and Babylon 5. Hired by Rocket Pictures to create the aliens for the recreation segments of this program, Criswell was very interested to finally see the real thing.
By Hollywood standards, I would say it's a pretty decent puppet. Well, to be honest with you, I would love to buy this being real, but it's probably a hoax. Well, I think this is a really cool design, and it's a great concept, but I think I could have done better. Whoever did this, I mean, they could have a job in Hollywood in a minute, no problem. This one has a much creepier quality than the alien autopsy tape, I think.
Yeah, that's what's cool about it.
That one I definitely didn't buy just because of the way it laid on the table. There was a couple of things. This actually, whoever did this was, or if someone did this, they were very clever because it hides a lot of stuff. So
Yeah, obviously they're trying to insinuate that it's not a hoax, But let's say even if it's a hoax, I think the majority opinion would be like, okay, this was a hoax back in the day. But I think that hoaxes are a form of art. If that's the case, if that's even true, because there's always the possibility of it being real. This is always sort of still has speculation. These tapes still have speculation about them to this very day. But let's say it's a hoax. I think hoaxes are a form of art as well. And I think this is a very well made fragment of video created by some human for one purpose or another. Whether it's real, whether it's a hoax, it was still created by humans for humans, right? And it's interesting, man, just having that frame, the alien hunched over, the spotlight overhead, screens flickering in the background, and that always constantly ticking code at the bottom. It's fascinating.
That's what makes me kind of disbelieve it a little bit. But, you know, who knows?
Criswell thought the alien exhibited movements that would be difficult to fake.
There are moments when this looks very real, and I don't know how they did certain little things about this. So right when I would say that it's definitely a puppet, he moves a certain way, or he'll lift up in the frame and all that, and all these little things are important to the to the character.
Damn.
Academy Award winner Rick Baker is one of Hollywood's reigning masters of makeup effects. He transformed Eddie Murphy into a 300-pound man for The Nutty Professor and has created monsters for countless films, including An American Werewolf in London and the UFO-related Men in Black. Baker dismissed the tape as a fake.
Yeah, this doesn't fool me. I don't buy this. I think this is a puppet, and you've got a table in the foreground that's hiding the rest of its body. You've got some kind of, whatever that instrument is in the foreground, it's also lit very mysteriously. I think if you were going to record this alien, you would want to see it, and you wouldn't want to hide it behind a table, and you would light it in a way that would show up much more than this.
Okay. They're not afraid to...
This head-jerking movement here especially looks very puppety to me. It looks a little overdone. And,
they're not afraid to invite speculation.
Inside this thing, maneuvering it. I guess he's supposed to be ill here. Is that what's going on? It just looks like they went to a great deal of effort to hide as much of the anatomy other than the head on this puppet, and I just don't buy it. I would be willing to stake my reputation on the fact that I think this is a hoax.
It's just the question, the discussion.
In Baker's opinion, there was no controversy at all.
The discussion in the first place of is it real, is it fake, is just magical, I think. To people, just sort of getting lost in this dark reality that could change everything that you think you know, potentially, down to this very, very, frightening, eerie image.
It's a fake, in my opinion. We could build better. We have built better, actually.
UFO expert Robert Dean, on the other hand, had no doubt whatsoever that the tape was authentic.
This is powerful because this is not a staged event. This is real.
In the 1960s, Robert O. Dean served as an Army intelligence analyst at NATO headquarters in Europe, where he claims to have seen first-hand evidence of alien beings and their artifacts.
Holy shit.
Retired from the Army, he is now a highly regarded UFO researcher and analyst. Dean was asked to view the tape and offer his expert opinion.
That's an awesome room.
Like a piece of livestock, wiping his lips.
Calling on his own first-hand experience for comparison, Robert Dean was stunned and moved by what he saw.
That breaks my heart. I think you've got yourself a piece of legitimate footage here, and I think you've got your hands on some pretty sensitive material. I don't know how the hell you got this. I don't know who you got it from, and frankly, I don't want to know who you got it from. But you got yourself a tiger by the tail with this footage. I would say, and I know that that's one of the things you ask of me, is that you've got yourself some legitimate footage of one of the little guys being interrogated and filmed. And there's a reality to it, and there's a sensitivity to it that literally breaks my heart. But I tell you very strongly, you've got something here that is very sensitive. Well,
I mean, what a performance from this guy. And you know what, frankly, I don't think this is an acting thing. I don't think it is a performance. This guy genuinely believes. And he has an emotional connection. And emotionally, he knows this to be true, right? There's some people out there, obviously, this guy doesn't give it a second thought. He says it's fake. This guy says it's real. And both of them are living in a world where they're each living in their own world, you know. This is proof that you can believe whatever you want to believe, and you can be affected by anything that you invite yourself to be affected by.
Detail with this footage. I would say, and I know that that's one of the things you'll ask of me, is that you've got yourself some legitimate footage of one of the little guys being interrogated and filmed. And there's a reality to it, and there's a sensitivity to it that literally breaks my heart. But I tell you very strongly, you've got something here that is very sensitive. Well, I know that the level of classification on this kind of a thing is so far damned above top secret that you can't imagine how sensitive this kind of thing is, and how delicate it is, and how tightly the government sits on anything like this.
Sean Morton looked for clues to the tape's authenticity in the technical details of the interview's setting.
Okay, there's a couple of interesting things about the tape right off the bat.
Morton tried to decipher the time code at the bottom of the screen.
First off, what you're looking at in the time code is DNI's Department of Naval Intelligence. So Department of Naval Intelligence, this would probably be a file number 27. It could be a security level, however, because security levels are supposedly go up to Q36, or the highest ones that we know about. The first interesting thing about that is that I'm noticing what looks like a medical monitor, and look at how slowly and erratic the heartbeat is. The heartbeat is literally 1, 2. It's very, very erratic, and it looks as though the heartbeat being as erratic as it is only about, from counting that, it looks like it's about 30 a minute or so.
Morton suggested an alternate explanation for the video's dim lighting.
One of the unusual things about most of these particular race of aliens is they are very, very sensitive to light. So a lot of these interviews are conducted in very darkened rooms.
To Morton's eye, many features of this alien dovetailed with accounts of other first-hand contactees.
Another strange thing about the physiognomy of these creatures is, as well, is if you will notice that the neck itself is not at the back of the head like a human being is. The neck is actually in the center of the head, which is what actually gives it problems holding its head and its neck up. Whatever this is, it's being taken, the interview is actually being done through a piece of glass, which is probably something somebody faking the photographs probably wouldn't think about. Right there we see that the creature appears to be choking. The dark eyes, in many cases, are actually a form of lens that guards the creature against untoward sunlight. It's a remarkable piece of footage. I mean, it's very, 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 very interesting. If it's a hoax, it's very well done. If it's not, then I would say it's probably revolutionary.
Another expert who was asked to examine the tape was Michael Hesseman, one of Europe's leading UFO researchers and author of the international bestseller Beyond Roswell.
When I got the first information about the alien interview footage, and when I saw the first picture, I said there might be a connection to a real incident.
Hesseman was intrigued both by the alien's appearance and by Victor's claim that the being arrived at Area 51 in 1989.
If it is authentic, it might be the most significant film ever published, ever shown on television.
For several years now, Hesseman has been investigating reports that the South African Air Force shot down a flying saucer in the Kalahari Desert in 1989. According to Hesseman's sources, 2 survivors were retrieved from the downed saucer. One was sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and the other to Area 51. The extraterrestrial in Victor's tape bears a striking resemblance to descriptions of the Kalahari ET, and the timing of its appearance at Area 51 is consistent with the South African incident.
If you see the drawings we have of the Kalahari alien and the descriptions we have, it seems to be the same being. And the Kalahari incident puts the alien interview footage into a context and gives it at least a probability that it might be real. It might be the real stuff, we just don't know.
Whitley Strieber, best-selling author of Communion, claims to have had numerous personal contacts with alien beings.
Now, Communion is really fascinating too. If you haven't read that, that's actually probably one of the most famous books about ufology and like I don't even know what you would call it, alienology, or sort of even less the belief in. I mean, part of it is about the unidentified flying objects themselves, but a big part of it is in like the actual analysis of the beings themselves. Very fascinating.
He has become the de facto spokesman for the growing number of people who claim to have been abducted by extraterrestrials. The nationally syndicated television program Strange Universe asked Strieber and several other abductees to view the alien interview tape. What Strieber saw left him profoundly shaken. Strieber would not agree to be interviewed on camera for this program, but on Strange Universe, he had this to say.
Very difficult to watch this because somebody who made this knows something about the way they move. I hope to God it's a fake, because if it's not, I'm so ashamed for mankind. Yeah, they're treating it like a piece of cattle.
On May 23, 1997, Victor gave a radio interview on the nationally syndicated show Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Speaking by telephone from an unknown location, Victor answered questions from host Art Bell and his guest, UFO expert Sean Morton.
From the Kingdom of Nye, Coast to Coast AM continues with Art Bell.
It is going to be a very interesting morning.
I love Art
Let's see
Bell.
if we've got Victor on the line. Victor, are you there?
I'm here.
Welcome to the program, Victor.
Afterwards, this is what Bell and Morton had to say about Victor's credibility.
What a hell of an interview, huh?
Boy, oh boy, talk about making history on the radio. It was, as far as I could tell, he answered every question properly as far as exactly where the locations are, to the, descriptions of the, the transports, the 737s, to the CTS-43s, the retinal scans, the 5 levels at S4.
A veteran of countless controversial interviews, Art Bell still found himself impressed by his encounter with Victor.
In the first, I think, half hour, I sensed that I was getting a kind of a runaround, or that I was not satisfied with the quality of the answers that I was being given. But as the interview progressed, and Victor, to some degree, began to relax, I began to get a different sense, and that was that he was telling me the truth.
Now, I love Art Bell, man. He's such a badass, and he's really like a big inspiration to me. And so is Victor, too, I guess. But who is Victor, right? It's calling into question, who is Victor? I mean, who else out there knows about the retinal scans? Who else out there knows about the locations of the transports of S4? You know what I'm talking about?
I think Victor was scared. I think Victor really is scared. And so my judgment of the interview after about the first, maybe 20 minutes, half hour, is that we began to get some real information. It was a significant milestone. There's no question about that in broadcasting.
If the government has really been in contact with superior aliens, wouldn't we see some evidence of it? For instance, amazing new scientific discoveries.
Limitless free energy? A cure for cancer? We might if the government's motive were the betterment of mankind.
Now think about who else talks like this, right? A lot of people have their theories out there. A lot of people think Victor's Whitley Strieber, but straight up, I'm just going to say it. I believe that Victor is Bob Lazar. I mean, they had this whole segment at the beginning saying Bob Lazar went in disguise for an interview under Dennis and didn't want to reveal his identity. I think this is footage that he did not want to associate with himself, but he wanted to release it. It's somebody that knows all the same information Bob Lazar knows. He uses such similar mannerisms to him, and if you analyze the audio, I believe this is Bob Lazar with thick sunglasses and fake facial hair, sitting in a room with a fake plant in a suit. That's exactly what I think. That is exactly what I think. And it's all makes sense and wraps in on itself. A lot of people don't want to believe that. A lot of people don't believe that at all. A lot of people don't believe Lazar and do believe Victor. But it's just such a strange coincidence. They had all this stuff about Lazar at the beginning. It was like they were telling us the whole time. You know, it was like Lazar orchestrated this whole thing almost from the beginning. And, you know, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I mean, he was one of the biggest leakers of real Area 51 shit of all time. And he's coming out with all this stuff.
Was a significant milestone. There's no question about that. In broadcasting.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
If the government has really been in contact with superior aliens, wouldn't we see some evidence of it? For instance, amazing new scientific discoveries.
Limitless free energy? A cure for cancer? We might if the government's motive were the betterment of mankind. The government's motive is control. And just as much as they crave control, they fear loss of control. Knowledge is power, but power does not necessarily confer competence. The people at the top of this program are intellectually very average. They're not capable of making proper use of what's been handed to them, but they have no intention of letting anyone else ever get a chance to solve the puzzle. And let's not forget there's also the real possibility that the government is being manipulated by the extraterrestrials for their own purposes.
You could have released this tape to the news media, but you insisted on being paid for it. Doesn't that cast doubt on your own motives?
Yes, and I was aware of that going in, but that's a cross I'm prepared to bear. I find it disgusting that the most important event in human history is being kept secret simply because certain unimaginative officials have the power to do so. But at the same time, I do see the irony in my own actions. All I can say is, had I had the choice, I would not have insisted on profiting from this revelation, but since by lifting this veil I've endangered not only my career, but possibly my life, I felt the need for some small measure of monetary freedom to deal with any eventualities. And let me say, I could have demanded significantly more money than I did if I had been willing to compromise my anonymity. There have been other whistleblowers who jumped at the chance to become celebrities, which I think casts even more doubt on their motives than some people may be casting on mine.
Do you believe your life is in danger as a result of making this tape public?
I would hope not. I would like to think my government is a little more civilized than that, but at the same time I don't intend to give them the chance to prove me wrong. At any rate, to a certain extent, I'm counting on being disbelieved. Obviously, they would like me to be perceived as a hoaxer. If something were to happen to me, if I should die suddenly in a freak accident, it would obviously lend credence to my story, and I assume they understand that and will act or not act accordingly.
Why should anyone believe this tape is authentic?
Use your own judgment. That's all any of us can do. There's been so much secrecy and disinformation over the last 50 years that it's become impossible to prove anything in the face of official denial. Of course, the flip side is nobody really believes anything the government says.
Robert D.
It's true, man, and you can't believe anything that anyone says, even Victor and even me. I'll tell you, it's possible that it's not Lazar and it's someone else, and there are still debates about this. You know, very rarely these days, it's not as much talked about anymore. But there's all types of fan theories about who Victor is, and what the story really is behind this.
Dean heads a growing movement lobbying Congress to release former NASA intelligence and military officials from their security oaths so they can talk openly about U.S. involvement with UFOs and aliens.
As early as '49, your government knew we were dealing with extraterrestrial intelligence. And then it sort of blew up more and more. Every year there were more discoveries, more conclusions, more contacts. And as you probably know, we have indeed retrieved crashed hardware, and we have reverse engineered it, and we have indeed been flying some of that hardware in this base not too many miles outside of Nellis, near Las Vegas.
Dean believes the time has come for the government to tell the people what it knows.
The truth has got to come out. We're over 30 years too late. The people not only have a right to know, they have a need to know. And damn it, I stand in this belief, and I will say this and stand by this till the day I die. Congress has the responsibility, Congress has the obligation to the people, to the Constitution, and to the nation.
Wow. That guy's brilliant, man.
Did this alien die?
I can't answer that with certainty. I do know the interviews came to an end. Whether the being died or was retired, and I don't mean that in the spy thriller sense of having it killed, I mean retired from the interview process. I just don't know. I'm fairly certain it didn't go home, at least not in the physical sense. But these beings, they don't seem to be very concerned about dying or avoiding death.
Why do you think that is?
Maybe they know what comes after death with more confidence than we do. Maybe there's another vessel waiting for them on the other side.
The other side?
Yes, which may in fact be where they come from in the first place.
Wow.
I've heard the claims that they come from Zeta Reticula or the Pleiades, but it hasn't been established that they come from out there at all. Their saucers may not travel through space as we know it. They may fold in from another dimension, another reality.
You make them sound almost supernatural, like angels or devils.
Supernatural is just a term for aspects of nature we don't understand. For
Precisely.
many people, they certainly do serve the functions of both angels and devils, forces we can't comprehend. Have you had enough of me? I think I've earned my money.
100%. Extraterrestrial highway.
Is seeing believing? Can the images on this little tape really be what Victor claims? To even take the question seriously requires a belief in the possibility of wonder, a willingness to accept an almost unimaginable truth. It's far easier and safer to label it a hoax. I'm standing on Nevada Highway 375, America's official extraterrestrial highway, redesignated last year by the legislature in acknowledgement of the worldwide fame that has become attached to this desolate spot. Beyond those mountains is Area 51, the most widely discussed secret place on Earth. Whether as a hoax or a mind-expanding revelation, this alien interview is now a part of the Area 51 legend. There will come a day when the secrecy at Area 51 ends. When that day comes, then we will know whether this tape was real and what the true motive was for its sudden appearance.
Yeah.
Until then, we can only speculate, investigate, and hope.
Here we go, and the classical archetype of the television host to bring us back down to Earth. Leave us hanging on the edge. What is beyond there? What is underneath in Area 51? Is it that alien being? Has it been retired? Well, that's it. I don't know about all that, but okay, now come on now.
How would you,
So
as
that
a
is very
higher
fascinating.
intelligence, represent yourself
What the fuck is this?
to a lesser.
I need to see this. Very fascinating. That really is what it is. It is very powerful back in the day. The alien interview footage, you know, very influential, very powerful, and very unique video that came out back in the day. Sort of opened up a lot of new questions and sort of served as the basis for a lot of theories that people had from then on. And even though the hype around UFOs and aliens has mostly died down, as at least compared to what it was in the past, or at least it's a lot more mainstream, you know, and it's not as fringe. It sort of just remains floating out there as just a sort of remnant of the mystery that was going on at that time, this big cultural sort of mystery that people were sort of participating in, searching for the truth. And it's just interesting to go back and revisit stuff like that. Thank you guys for watching and stay tuned to the Unknown Zone.